Hello and welcome to the Resounding Collective, a podcast for those who love to share stories, relive the past, and spend time with their friends. My name is Jonathan Doan. I'm your host. So today joining me is my good friend, Chris ORiley. Chris, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, Jonathan. How are you?
I'm doing excellent, man. It's good to talk to you, and so glad to have you on our inaugural video podcast.
Hell yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a couple months since I saw you.
It has, hasn't it?
It's almost weird seeing your face without like a backdrop of woods and trees and tents and fire.
Yeah, that brings to mind, something that where we actually met, because so there's a place called Sherwood Forest Faire, and Jenny and I used to actually go to it a few times before we really knew anybody here, because we moved to the Austin area. It's just outside Austin. We moved to the Austin area about 2018, something like that. And we went to Sherwood Forest Faire a couple of times because we used to go to like Scarborough Fair up in Waxahachie, which is close to where we used to live. And really loved the place, but then we got to know some people here, and so is my friend Tom, and he's like, hey, have you considered being friends of Faire? And we thought about it, like, well, that sounds kind of cool. You know, you get to camp and whatnot, and it was kind of a cool idea. So
for your listeners who don't know, that's the season pass where you get to leave up a tent for like 10 to 11 weeks, and it's just always there. So you get a season pass to the fair, and you have a little permanent home every weekend.
Yeah, and really that was kind of the draw initially. Was the permanent home kind of thing, because used to be the drive was about 45 minutes or so. You'd be there as long as possible because you wanted to enjoy all the stuff you could. And by the end of the day, we're just like so exhausted, and we would miss out on certain things. And Jenny would always say, you know, it'd be so cool if we did do something like the camping or whatever, so I could just go take a nap for a little bit and then come back and be refreshed, and we could continue having fun and things like that. So
yeah, let's be real. You can't go as hard when you have to save a little to get back and pack up camp.
Right. And like a lot of fun stuff would happen in the evening, and we're just like, I want to see that, but I'm so tired, and we got to drive all the way home and all that stuff. So it turned out, you know, it was a great idea. And really, I don't know, probably after the first weekend of Friends of Faire that we became Friends of Faire, I'm like, oh, we're doing this forever if we can.
Same.
So yeah, that was the initial thing. And then so our friend is like, hey, have you thought about joining a clan or whatever? I'm part of a clan, and a lot of people, you know, it's fun to do. We're all friends, and we got a big old campfire, and you just set up your tent and all that sort of stuff. We'll look into it if you'd like. We can invite you over, and you can hang out for a bit and see if it's something you might be into. So, it had a little bit of trepidation.
Undersold the hell out of it.
Yeah. If you know, right? It's one of those things. But so yeah, we ended up liking everybody, which is good, and eventually we met Chris and had a blast, had a lot of fun. We go there, like you said, it was it's like at least 2 months or
so the fair is a full 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
And then you do move in a couple weeks before, and then you get a couple weeks to move out. So for the Friends of Faire, you have like 10 to 12 weeks of being able to fairly well come and go and do things. And it's pretty much my favorite thing to do in the year.
Yeah, us too. And
speaking of favorite things,
I already forgot.
What do you got for me tonight?
Favorite things? What do you...
Topics? Things to talk about?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I blanked out there. Oh, so like topics and such, huh? Well,
yeah, podcast stuff.
Podcast stuff. Actually, aside from the whole where I met you and Sherwood Forest Faire, which I hadn't intended on, but hey, I wanted to talk about that stuff too. So now we're going to talk about that. Maybe add a little bit here and there. But I actually thought about cars, mainly because I've been driving my own car a lot recently. For my job, I do a lot of delivering the packages and whatnot. And so I was thinking about also the latest and greatest crazy thing out there is the Cybertruck. So, and what's kind of crazy, though, is, we live in the Austin area, and just south on the east side is the Tesla Gigafactory, which I remember driving past it when they were building it, thinking that place is utterly massive. It's like if you, I guess if you were to compare it to a football stadium or something, it's probably like 20 football stadiums. It's just absolutely huge.
You look at it and you think zip code, not building.
Yeah, it is a little mini city, you know. Yeah, so yeah, that's just why it came to mind, and I thought maybe we could talk about that. But
we certainly can. Like, I've got opinions on it. Who doesn't? Me and Andrea, my partner, we keep seeing them everywhere we go.
Yeah,
and we don't even drive around that much anymore. So to see them that much, like, Austin must have a ton of them.
Oh yeah. What's crazy for me though is the city we live in is, I guess it's part of the shipping route or something, because not every day, but all the time I will see those the semi trailers with all the cars on it. They're all Teslas, and there's usually one or two Cybertrucks on every single one I see. So I see those all the time, like every other day at least. So
with their shape, do they like stack them on top of each other all creatively, or are they just, wheels down all boring like?
No, actually they're almost always on the top. In fact, I think they are always on the top, and it's like the middle spot and the back spot. That's where you'll see the Cybertrucks, and then the rest of the cars will fill in the rest of the gaps on those things. But so that's where I've seen the most. I've actually seen one or two in town, and a lot of them have wraps, which I think is kind of cool, because that's one of the biggest complaints of the Cybertruck.
I've heard it's necessary.
Pretty much, yeah. You almost have to clean it every single day, because not just your fingerprints, which will be everywhere, but any dust or dirt. It's like the manual says, clean it immediately. Do not leave it alone.
Stainless is a bit of a misnomer there, and that's a huge complaint I've heard. And I would, let's just put it out there, I wouldn't have one. But if I did, it'd be getting wrapped pronto.
Yeah, and I have that's the kind of cool thing, though. But I've seen some pretty interesting, nice-looking wraps, actually. Cool designs and whatnot. And but I first noticed wraps, like, with other Teslas, because I'd see one that was like, well, that's obviously not a Tesla color, because it's not something you'll see on a lot. But then also it's got the kind of matte finish, which I really like the look of the matte finish ones, because like the real matte paint finish on a car is apparently very, very expensive and extremely hard to keep up with. So if you just put a wrap on there, it looks, you wouldn't know that it wasn't actually paint, and it looks fantastic. But yeah, I've seen some pretty creative wraps on Tesla Cybertrucks too.
I've only seen a couple of commercial wraps in the wild. People getting it for their billboard car, so to speak, for their company. Yeah. I've seen a couple of those, like two.
Yeah, and it's so crazy that I know a lot of people, I don't know them, but I'll bet you a lot of people buy them specifically to create content around them, simply because they're so just crazy and viral, and
which is kind of unfortunate for a lot of them, because not to get too political or anything, but Mr. Musk is not putting a decent shine on the company these days, and so a lot of these dudes with Teslas are just getting dragged.
yeah, and that was what's the meme? Something like, isn't it crazy that the one vehicle that all these kind of leaf lovers, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you're getting a Tesla because you're good for the environment and all that stuff, and now look what's happened to them. Like, but yeah, back to what you said about Mr. Musk. I've wanted a Tesla for the longest time. I kind of want an electric car anyway. I would love to have like an older manual transmission, just regular car, specifically for just owning and having fun, driving it around on the weekends, and then just having a commuter car. And I really wish I had one like years ago, when I used to commute from my home like all the way across town to where, this was before the pandemic, I drove to work, and it was like almost an hour one way. So if I had an electric car, it would have been so much easier. And I still want an electric car, and I still want a Tesla, but unfortunately, after I guess it kind of started with Musk buying Twitter, which is now X, and seeing all the ridiculous things that he's done. I still won't call it X.
I refuse.
Come on, it's Twitter. But yeah, after all that, I'm like, you know what? I just don't like the guy at all. I don't want to give him any of my money. But I still want a Tesla. They're beautiful cars. I don't really love the super minimalism of them, like especially like on the inside. I love the exterior. I think they look great, and the performance is great. But I don't really like the interior. How they now I think all of them have like a push button turn signal. You don't get stalks anymore, and I want at least the turn signal. It makes sense. Like if you're turning and then you need to turn immediately. You're like which direction am I going? I need to go that way, and I've already missed my turn anyway. Whereas if you got the you got the little turn stalk. That's what you need. You need stalks. Come on, at least bring the turn stalks
There's
back.
innovation, and then there's making the inside of the car a little alien, and sometimes that line can get a little blurred.
Yeah, that was another thing. Like the people who bought Cybertruck, obviously, if you're the first, like the inaugural purchaser of pretty much any brand new thing, yeah, you're going to be kind of like a beta tester, really. And unfortunately for those people, they were promised, starting price $50,000, and you'll be able to get one for $75,000 for the first run or whatever. But it turns out it's $100,000 for the first run, and there's still a lot of those Tesla issues where panel gaps were bad. The interior is not exactly the highest quality, and it's like if you're paying that kind of money, you'd expect at least some sort of quality. But apparently, they didn't get too much of that. And
you can only do so much with flat surface sheet metal. Like cars are designed the way they're designed for a reason, and it's been that way for decades on decades. And like I love the look of classic cars. Love it. Mm-hmm. I love some of the old square. I had a 78 Ford Granada growing up. Thing had power seats, power windows, and an 8-track player. Like big old Cadillac looking old man mobile, and I loved this car. Loved it. But it was basically a knocked over cigarette box. It was a big square. And aesthetically, I loved that. But all my panels lined up because there was some subtle rounding, It wasn't any stark, like if something was slightly out of place. I got hit twice in that car. And it didn't dent a thing. It was just a block of metal.
Yeah. I'm assuming
something
the
had been out of
Cybertruck would
place,
be the same way.
You wouldn't have noticed. But on those planes on the Cybertruck, like anything happens at all, it's going to look jarring.
Right. And also, if you're not paying attention, you put your hand in there and then you catch it on the corner, because that was one thing that people are already getting. And, there's a video. I got to share the link.
The carrots.
Find the link in the description. Yeah. So the one I watched was it's a show called Throttle House. They're out of Canada, and they had the Cybertruck for like a week or something and drove it. But one of the things they did was the carrot test, where they took like 3 carrots, put it in the front trunk or frunk, put it on the side, and it smashed them to bits. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But and to Tesla's credit, they have fixed that. So it will now go beep. Oh no, there's something there, and go back up. But the simple fact that it actually made it to the public with that type of issue happening, and it's like, where's the government looking at that going, that's dangerous. You can't put that on until you put a sensor there so someone's finger doesn't get cut off or whatever. Or these edges are too sharp. Someone's gonna
forget
slice
the
heck out of
government. That
themselves.
shouldn't have made it past any kind of QA.
No, it
but
shouldn't.
We know that somebody's face is in charge of how fast things are moving and pushing things forward.
Yep.
Rather than somebody who, is really caring about the product and knows what they can do with it. Did you hear about him wanting the new specs for all the lines down to the micron? I'm like, do you know how manufacturing works, my friend? Because you should.
Well, he did say in an interview that he thinks he knows more about manufacturing than anyone on the planet, but that doesn't mean he cares.
Yeah, manufacturing
right.
a persona, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. I was like, I don't know. There's probably some people who've been in manufacturing longer than he's been alive who would probably just look at him and go, But hey, that's not me, so I won't comment on that. But so yeah, aside from that, the little thing with the finger, and the funny thing is, a couple of probably YouTubers or content creators have done just that. Like, here we go, I'm going to put my finger in there, and it's like, whoa, this actually hurts. I think my finger is broken.
Wow.
I think it did actually cause a hairline fracture or whatever. I'm like, well, you idiot. But
I mean, people will do anything for clicks.
Oh, yeah. But you know what's going to happen is, like, when I first saw the design of the Cybertruck, the first thing I thought was that back corner where the bed is. I'm like, okay, so someone's not going to be paying attention, and their face is going to hit that thing, and their face will be the thing caving. And then the other thing is, like, with the front trunk open, one guy... okay, so the YouTuber's name is Hoovie. So Hoovie's Garage, I'll link it in the show notes too. It's a really, really great show. It's fun. But he had his Cybertruck and he wasn't paying attention and caught the corner of his head on the edge of the Cybertruck. Let me see if I can...
Which I'm guessing is a perfect 90-degree angle.
It's just like there might be a few microns of curvature at the corner, but yeah, it was...
There's those microns he was looking for.
Yep.
There they are. Found them.
Yeah, let's see. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to see if I can find a couple of pictures of the Cybertruck.
You know, if you
search for
grab some old screenshots of, like, Tomb Raider 1 and just zoom in on Lara Croft's chest, people won't be able to tell the difference.
That's what it'll look like. Yeah, let's see. Share.
It's kind of funny, you know, everyone always asks kids, oh, what do you think cars are going to look like? Or draw a car from the future. And, of course, every kid draws this thing.
Every kid. Like, just searching for it, I found this. This reminded me of one thing. Like, this image was a design idea that I think Tesla was coming up with. Like, this is what it'll look like when you buy this particular attachment, and you can go camping with your Cybertruck.
And I heard they made this, and it does not look anything like that.
It's like, yeah, it's like, okay.
It looks like a sad
The
bag.
concept looks way better. A sad bag. Oh, yeah. And, you know, there's things like
it's like
this.
the plastic
really
bag
cool.
that they'll give you at the store in Austin because they don't want you to have a plastic bag, and like, here's the saddest one we could possibly give you.
All right. Yeah, let's see. Cybertruck front trunk. So I got to show a picture of this open because this is what, you know, I didn't know what it looked like until I saw it, and I was like, oh wow, really? Like, okay, this corner.
Oh man, yeah,
you can see the
that
corner
looks
there.
like we're about to scare some French monarchy. We're not going to shove you in the trunk. We're just going to put you halfway and close it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just looking at that, it's like, okay, so how long is it going to be before the lawsuits start coming in, going, this thing sliced the crap out of me, and this is dangerous, and you should fix it? Even though they'll probably say, well, don't get near it. I mean, but you know how it is. It's like people find a way to hurt themselves and sue the company that made the thing that they hurt themselves on, even if it's not even the company's fault. It's like, this hurt me. You should pay me.
If you're going to make a car made of sharp angles, maybe doing it in the most litigious country in the world wasn't the move.
All right.
And I'm from California, like land of the Great White Lawsuit, man.
Right. I wonder how many other countries will ever get one of these, because, you know, Europe is like, nope, this is not happening, because there's so many safety regulations that this obviously wouldn't pass.
And they're going to have the infrastructure to charge electric vehicles. And of course, you know, like Apple, it's going to be proprietary this and proprietary that over here, where I'm pretty sure they deregulate a bunch of stuff like that in Europe, and you don't have the ability to make stuff like that. Is that correct?
I'm sure there is. It's like there's always kind of weird things that pop up over the years too. Like case in point, another great YouTube channel is Doug DeMuro. So he basically just reviews cars and talks about the quirks and features and whatnot. And a lot of times he'll review older cars, which is what I really like, because usually he'll find a really good example of one that's barely been modified at all, or not modified at all. It's in great condition. But a lot of the cars of the old days, like, regulations were very weird, you know. But that actually reminded me, you talked about your first car, and that was the question I was going to ask. Like, what was your first car?
That wasn't my first one. What was that? That was my second car. My first one was a 94 Toyota Supra.
Wow, that's fancy.
Yeah. Not really. If you go look up the 94, you'll see what I mean. But I was working at a Carl's Jr., and one of my supervisors was selling it, and I was like, okay, well, how much? He said $2,000. I went, wow. Pretty sure I can afford that in a couple months, and I was making piss poor money because I was working on fast food back in the day. I was what, 16, 17?
Nice.
And my foster dad helped me buy it, and I had it for a couple months. Burned out my first clutch, like you do. And I got in a nasty wreck on the highway.
Ouch.
One of my buddies decided to race me in his VW Golf. And nope, not Golf, Rabbit. VW
nice.
Rabbit.
Oh, yeah, I remember those.
And so, he got smoked. I'm not a racer, but the difference in the cars was obvious. And so, I'm flying down the highway, driving like an asshole teenager, because I was. And I got so far ahead, so fast, that I was like, okay, clearly the race is over. I'm just going to pull into the fast lane, got my buddy in the passenger seat, and just cruise. Done driving like an asshole. I won, proved my point. So now that I'm nice and relaxed, he comes out of nowhere, like 5 minutes later, cuts me off and hits the brakes.
Oh, God.
Now, I shared the part about burning out my clutch for a reason. It still was not pure instinct to clutch and then brake yet. And so I jammed on the brake and I spun across 4 lanes of highway.
Ooh.
And I hit a car just coming onto the on-ramp.
Wow.
Missed my dumb buddy by millimeters, but he was coming on the on-ramp and I hit him. He bounced off the wall, tried to correct, and then his truck rolled several times.
Oh, ouch.
So he's fine. I saw the remains of his car later with the remains of my car, and it looked a lot worse than it apparently was. But it was pretty bad. So that car didn't last very long, but it was very fun to have when I had it. It was just my first experience with how to fuck up driving a stick shift car and what to look out for.
Right.
So never made that mistake again.
Well, there you go. That's the beauty of learning from your mistakes. You don't keep making them. You don't keep making the same mistake again and again. But
what was your first car?
My first car was a 1978 Buick Park Avenue. So very similar to your second.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love that we have a similar experience. Did it also drive like a boat?
Oh, of course. I mean, the thing was huge, absolutely huge. But I loved it, though, because it was comfortable. It was in great shape for its age. It wasn't beat up at all. And
mine shone.
I do remember the first thing I changed was the radio, because it was just a radio, one of those old-timey push-button radios.
You didn't even have an 8-track player like I did?
No.
Oh, man,
sad,
mine came with an 8-track and a shoebox full of 8-tracks.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. And I'm kind of surprised that, I guess I'm not surprised that we never had 8-tracks in the house. We had cassettes, but we didn't have 8-tracks because my dad hated 8-tracks, and he was kind of an audio snob. He's like, 8-tracks are crap. I don't want that junk. But yeah, I never had a car or saw a car with an 8-track built in, which I thought it'd be kind of cool, especially after seeing what was it? Men in Black, the first one, where he presses the button and then the car transforms and it's going super fast. And he's like, yeah, you like music? He just pops in an 8-track. It's like, wow.
And looking back, because I did a little research on this car afterward, once the internet had become a proper thing and I could go look back and see what people had to say about it. My 78 Granada was apparently like a top of the line thing back then. That was a very pristine, posh vehicle. I mean, it had power seats, power windows. Wow. 1978.
You know what? I think mine did too. Power seats and power windows.
Yeah, but it was nice, man.
Did you have leather interior?
I did. All leather interior, all the wood accents. It was white with a cream top.
Wow.
With
that is fancy.
With chrome accents and chrome bumpers. And I mean,
I had the chrome bumpers.
The big chrome bumpers with the 2 protruding rubber bits on the front and back.
Oh, yeah.
Both times I got hit, they hit those bumpers. One dude hit me in the front, one dude hit me in the back. And they had crumpled panels and, all the things that modern cars are supposed to do. And mine had scuffs on the rubber.
Just little scuffs. Yeah. So you had the leather, but did you have the Corinthian leather?
I wouldn't know the difference back then. I couldn't have told you.
I only say that because, I think I remember seeing the original commercials back when I was a kid. The fine Corinthian leather. And then maybe a few years ago, I actually read or saw a video. I was like, there's no such thing. Like, there's no such place as, Corinth or Corinthia or whatever, but there's no such thing as Corinthian leather. The marketing team came up with the Corinthian leather because they thought it sounded exotic, and they needed to position this vehicle as
biblical.
Exotic.
Yeah, I was a church kid back then. I would have been like, okay, what in the Bible does this leather do for my car?
And the spokesman was, you might remember this guy's name, Ricardo Montalban. I think that's how you say it. So he was Khan he played Khan in was it the second Star Trek movie, Wrath of Khan?
Okay.
So the actor himself, and he was huge at the time, and I think he was actually getting on in years a little bit, because this was probably the late 70s, and he'd already been known throughout Hollywood as being a great actor and whatnot. And so, they got him to do it, and he said, and the interior has fine Corinthian leather. I'm like, when you say it that way, it just sounds so nice.
Everybody trusts me because of my well-known voice.
Yes. So, but mine was cloth interior, but I honestly didn't care. It was because it was my first car, and I only paid $500 for that thing.
Nice.
So I could
paid
actually afford
$600
it.
for mine.
Nice.
And it was leather interior and just...
Mm-hmm. And I had that thing throughout college, and I can't remember when I sold it, but I probably had it for 6 or 7 years.
Did you say yours was a V8?
It was, but it didn't matter because it had zero power, because it was just so huge. And I guess it came
mine
from
was
the
a
time
V8, and mine hauled
matter.
balls, man.
Really?
That thing was a very fast boat. I remember coming home from a rave, of all things.
Oh, nice.
I was 17, car full of kids decked out in rave gear.
Nice.
Got pulled over by a cop, and turns out I was a missing person because I'd left my house when I was 17, foster family drama. And I was like, goodness. No, officer, I didn't know I was missing. I'm right here. And so I'm sitting here sassing a cop after I'd sped a little bit in my car. He let us go, which we were very clearly about to go to I'm surprised he didn't follow us. But coming back from the rave, I stayed sober driver. I had come off the 91 freeway and hit some train tracks and caught air in my 78 Ford Granada with 6 people crammed in there. And not only did we catch air, but then we bottomed out and continued to bottom out for 6 more bounces. I can only imagine how many sparks were flying up on the road, but I wasn't looking in the rear view because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to crash.
Well, to get that boat, not only get air on that, but also with all the people in it, holy.
Granted, bunch of skinny-ass teenagers, but...
Right, but still, it adds up,
Yeah.
I mean, that reminds me of one morning when I was going to school. I started it up, and it took a while to get it going. It was a cold morning or whatever, but then it decided to cut off. It just stopped, and as I was backing up, and of course these old vehicles, once the car shuts off, you have very little braking power, and power steering goes away, so it's extremely difficult. But I thought I was going to hit the car behind me, and it was backing up, and I was just screaming, no. I was pushing with all my might. I was like, please don't hit the car, don't hit the car. I couldn't push any harder, and it was just very slowly stopping.
Park.
I was like, this car is so huge. Of course, I didn't even think of that. I was just going, no, stop.
Yep. Oh, teenage car
memories.
panic.
Sweet memories. Yeah, let me put it to you this way. At one point, I was driving up to Oklahoma City, where my parents lived, and this was, I was still in college a long time ago. I had made it past Denton, Texas, and my car just kind of died. And I didn't realize the reason it died is because I I hadn't taken it in for an oil change in way too long, and there was like next to no oil left, so it just seized. I was like, I called my dad. Hey, can you come get me? I'm stranded. So he and a family friend actually drove down from Oklahoma City, picked me up, and brought me back. And he kind of looked at the car. He's like, "Well, that's why, because you have like next to no oil in here." It's like, "Oh, you're supposed to get oil changes." Yeah, I forgot. I'm like, wow. But hey, I learned from my mistake, and I've never messed with oil again. I didn't mess anything up since then.
So any young listeners, RTFM, listen to your elders and change your oil.
For your own benefit, not just for ours, because you think, oh, I don't want to listen to you, but no.
Oh, yeah, no, I'll never know if you get stranded on the side of the road. I might be the guy who stops to help, but
yeah,
not something that's going to be my concern until I'm there.
Let me take a quick break here. I'm going to refresh my little drink that I'm sipping on. I'm sipping on some bourbon. So.
Just did that. Killed my Angel's Envy just now, so last one.
Oh, that's good stuff. So what you got there? I mean, what did you have earlier before you...
It was also Angel's Envy. I just had made it into an old-fashioned first.
Oh, old-fashioned.
Because when the pandemic hit, like every stupid white person, I made my own sourdough and then got into making cocktails.
As one does when you're stuck in the house,
right? Andrea did some gardening, and then we got into, bourbon. And because, fun fact, the reason that liquor stores stayed open during the pandemic as essential is because we have such a high rate of alcoholism here in the state that if people weren't able to get alcohol and start going into withdrawals, they would overwhelm the hospital system full of COVID patients. There was no place for them. So they had to deem liquor stores essential personnel.
Yep.
Don't know if that's 100% true, but sounds pretty right.
I like to believe it, yeah. But funny you mentioned old-fashioned, because I have with me my fun drink of choice. It's the Zero Sugar Monster Energy Zero Ultra. So zero sugar, and it's only 10 calories, which is great. Because like regular Monster, I'm not a fan. It's just too strong. It's kind of icky, right? But anyway, I've found that you pour a little bit of this into some bourbon, it actually tastes like an old-fashioned to me. Or not an old-fashioned, a whiskey sour. So,
okay, I could see it tasting like a whiskey sour because the vague battery acid taste of a lot of energy drinks. I could see that making bourbon sour.
Yeah. But I was like, hey, this is way easier because I like cocktails, but I don't like mixing them because it's too much work. I just pour this in and boom, you're done.
I'm going to pretend I never heard you say that. See you after the break.
I will be back in a moment. So I have with me, get situated, my bourbon of choice right now is called Benchmark, and this is the full proof, and this is super cheap. It's like $23
That looks
a bottle.
like it's made by Jack Daniels.
It kind of does. It's not. It's actually not Brown Foreman. It's Buffalo Trace, actually.
Okay. I love a lot of Buffalo
from the Buffalo
Trace
Trace
products.
Distillery. And it's quite good. Very tasty. Very nice little sip. And affordable.
Two I've been most excited about lately are Whistle Pig, of which there are many varieties to be excited about. There's so many different, I want to say just flavors. So many different pourings.
There's lots.
And then the other one was... Damn. Thought I had it and just gone.
It'll come to you.
It will. In the middle of talking about something else, I'm just going to shout the name of a different bourbon and just leave you baffled and confused. It's going to have to be edited out.
Yeah. But you mentioned Whistle Pig, and that's a really, really good brand. I think I bought like a 3-pack of just small-sized sample bottles because I hadn't tried it before. And I was like, oh, this is tasty. It's really good.
The sampler is solid. Another favorite I got recently when I got this bottle of Angels, actually, was Basil Hayden Toast.
I've tried that. Yeah.
Basil Hayden's a little floral, which is great. It's nice and easygoing, and my favorite thing about it is I can introduce friends to it who are not necessarily big bourbon drinkers, and it's approachable. It's inoffensive. I still like it because it's bourbon flavored still. Like, it's got a good, rich bourbon flavor without being super heavy. Don't get me wrong. I'll drink cask strength all day. My friends will not.
Right, there you go. Yeah.
But the toast, still fairly approachable, but has a lot more of that smoky bourbon flavor I like so much. And just, I'll drink that all day.
The only reason why I don't drink that one as much is because the proof point is so low. So I've gotten used to high proof, so I'm like, it could be, if only they released a cask strength version of it, I would probably buy it really quick.
See, that's funny, because
it is really tasty.
If I'm rolling in the dough at the moment, if things are going well and I can spend a little money on booze, I do the 3-bottle trick because I like to share. I like to invite people over for cocktails. I don't drink enough to justify 3 bottles by myself in like 6-month period. I don't drink that much.
Yeah.
But I'll buy one that's somewhere between 85 and 95, one 95 to 105, and then I'll buy something cask or barrel strength. Generally as a rule, because that way, if somebody comes over and I don't know if they're really into it or... my poor neighbor dude, I got him into bourbon, and he was excited to try it, and we made old fashions, so it was already a little more approachable, but you could see the poor kid's eyebrows singe, like, just he'd breathe out and go, yep, that's good. And I'm like, you don't have to lie. If you don't like it, bro, I'm not gonna peer pressure you into drinking. And he liked the flavor. It was high octane for him. And so the next time I went bottle shopping, I got a bottle of 83. There's one called Woodenville, I believe, that is a little bit sweeter and is 80 something or low 90. And that was a lot more approachable for him. I'm like, cool, this will be the U bottle. Like, I have no problem accommodating. But I didn't want him to suffer through a glass of 103 when he just wasn't going to enjoy it. Yeah.
Exactly. And
it's supposed to be enjoyed. Nobody's out here hero drinking trying to look cool.
Well,
we're too old for that.
But speaking of this brand, though, the Benchmark, Buffalo Trace, I don't have any right now, but that's one of those, if you're going to try, if you want to have friends over and let them try it, that's probably the first one to go to, because it's super tasty and it's very inoffensive. It's not strong.
My first is always Woodford.
Woodford, yeah.
Yep, Woodford, Buffalo Trace, right up there. Like that and Basil Hayden are my 3 intro to share with people.
One of my favorites is Weller. So they have their Special Reserve, which is kind of like their entry-level bottle, which, if you can find it around here, there's really only a couple of locations that actually have it in the Austin area, at least with any regularity. But that's one of those where it's really affordable if you buy it at the right place. Like, there's a Specs kind of on the way to where I used to work that almost always has it, and they put it at retail price, which is nice. But so that's a really, really delicious bottle, and it's low. It's great entry level proof point. So if you've never tried bourbon, that would be my second one to go to have a sip of that if you like it. And, maybe add a couple drops of water or put ice in it if you like the ice sort of thing. I used to try ice. I'm like, I don't really like ice in my bourbon, so I'll just sip it neat like this.
I always tell people to start with an ice cube, because right away you get a little bit of melt, so you get a bit of that water effect. Most people drink their drinks cold, at least some kind of chilled. And then if it's too strong for them, you say, okay, cool, put it down for now. You wait for the ice to melt. Then they've got a little more water in it, and then they might enjoy a little more later.
A little bit more. Yeah, and that's another thing I like about the cask strength, because sometimes it'll be a little too strong, so I'll just add a few drops of water, and that just kind of mellows it out a little bit and makes it go longer and all that good stuff.
It's crazy what a few drops of water will do to bourbon to make it open up and be accessible. And
yeah, so
I've never been, oh, gross, this is watered down. No, never in my life.
So how are you with nosing? Because I just don't do it, because I get nothing out of it, nothing at all.
So I get a little out of it. I've had 6 to 8 sinus surgeries. I had a deviated septum growing up, and just chronic sinus infections my whole life. It was all messed up there. And because of that, my sense of smell is not the greatest. But sticking my snoot in a glass of bourbon, there are a few things that I pick up. And I've never been a big believer in things like sommeliers and experts of various things that can stick their nose in something and tell you all the notes and blah, blah, blah. Like, I never really subscribed to that over much.
Yeah.
But I do believe that there are things like super tasters and super smellers, people who just can notice a lot more things, which must be hell in an elevator, let me tell you. But
of all the places that have that gift.
Yeah. But I happened across a coffee tasting at a Starbucks once. Totally accidental. I walked in, I started talking to a stranger because I can't shut the fuck up. And the manager heard me and was like, "Hey, do you want to join our tasting?" I was like, "Threaten me with a good time, let's go." And so everyone, stuck their snoot in their glass and was sniffing around. I'm like, I don't have much of a sense of smell, but I'll play along. Let's go. And for some weird reason, everything that they say on the bag of coffee that you're supposed to be able to smell and taste,
right,
I could identify without ever reading that stupid bag. It was the only time in my life that I was like, there might be something to this. Okay. All right, cool. And so to a degree, like, I could taste them. I can taste notes, and that's why I have favorite bourbons and bourbons that I'm not a big fan of. Like, all of them do have distinct different flavors and impressions and stuff you get. I can get some of those in a smell.
Yeah.
But I'm by no means going to, like, sell my ability to do that or try to convince somebody else of it. Like, it...
Yeah, I would sometimes try to convince myself that I could smell all those things, and maybe a couple of those, but no. But then again, like you said, some people have super senses in that regard, and Jenny, my girlfriend, yes, she has super nose ability, super nasal.
Andrea occasionally has, like, a bloodhound nose, and don't know.
And the reason I know it is because, like, we have 2 dogs and 2 cats, and almost always she would come into a room and go, "I smell cat pee," and I was like, "I don't smell anything." She's like, "It's really strong right over here." And I go over there and go, "I got nothing." But she would always be able to detect where it was and why it was. Or, it smells, have rats been in here? It smells like pee. So
it's this 2-inch square carpet. She's going to rub your nose in it one day and be like, "Oh, I found it."
See, it's right there. So
you got to get that camp blacklight that I have.
Oh, yeah. Back to the camping thing. Yeah, that's you always learn these sorts of things when you hang out with people and camp with them for weeks at a time. So it's during the weekend, right? So you go and you have fun and you camp, and you go Saturday, you go all day, and then spend the night, and then leave Sunday. So you're there for the whole weekend and learning new things as you camp, and finding you go to a place and you go, "Oh, I never thought to do that. That's a great idea. Like there's a light fixture or something like that." So you learn all these little things and
learn new things to do with the ropes all the time. Mm-hmm. You get to see
how to tie things up.
Yeah, you get to see somebody's like combo fan /light / emergency flotation device. You're like, what the?
Yeah, and a friend of ours had a fan. It was like a Ryobi fan, or Ryobi. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's the fan, but it was also designed to sit on top of a bucket, and it has a built-in mister.
Was it me? Because I have one of those, and I brought it to camp.
It actually wasn't, but it was another friend of ours. But we saw that, and we just pointed at it. I want that. What is that? I need one of those. And they're fantastic because the fan is really, really great. It's battery powered, and you can get the big battery, and they last hours at a time. And it has the little built-in mist, so you can turn it on low or high. So on the hottest days, you just
slap it on top of a Home Depot bucket where you bought all the Ryobi crap.
There you go.
I actually used mine last week on the last chainsaw job I did, because I take side work doing chainsaw work for anyone who's got trees falling over or needs them to fall over sooner rather than accidentally. Yeah. And this friend has Bradford pear trees, which, if they grow big enough, which they do very quickly, they tend to reach a point where they just fall over by themselves.
Because they're too big. Wow.
They get too big and too heavy, and the problem is, like, they'll get these huge branches that go out in every direction, but then they'll grow more branches vertically on those. So you've got...
Weird.
this.
A little lattice work happening.
And those get very, very heavy. Huh. So if your tree gets real heavy on one side, the whole thing just... There's a video on like a 5-mile-per-hour wind at night in my friend's front yard. Barely a breeze, and his tree just fell the hell over. He got it on his camera, on his doorbell camera. Sent it to me and was like, hey, bro, you still doing chainsaw work? Sends me this video, and I'm like, what happened? I know where you live. There was no storm last night. And he's like, I know, dude. It just fell over in the middle of the night, scared the hell out of all of us.
Well, I've learned something new because I did not know that.
Yep. They make a great hardwood. They're an excellent wood to burn. You could probably make good stuff out of it. And I have heard, Mr. Very Poor Sense of Smell here, I've heard that when they flower, they smell like piss. So your mileage may vary getting one, but
good
the
or
wood
bad.
Is great. The wood is great.
Nice.
I saved a bunch of this last one for myself for my bringing out to Faire because it was within 50 miles of Faire.
Nice. Yeah, that reminds me of like piñon wood, right? So we never had a chimenea, but then one of the things I learned personally moving to Texas is what a chimenea is because I went to a friend's house.
In front of HEB.
Yeah, I went to a friend's house and he had one. And I was like, "Oh, that's cool, nice little outdoor fire and stuff." And he's like, "Oh yeah, do you have a chimenea?" And I said, "What is it?" Chimenea. Okay, that's cool. I was like, "It smells really good. What do you got in there?" And he says, "That's piñon wood." I was like, "Oh, I've never heard of piñon wood, but I like it." And so, we don't have a chimenea, but we have a little kind of fire pit out back. And sadly, we rarely get to use it because it's rarely cold in Texas. But now that we know piñon wood, it's like it's one of life's little joys. Just one of those little things that makes you happy. If you ever have a chance to,
wood, huh?
Yeah, if you ever have a chance to burn piñon wood, that's like the perfect thing to do on a nice evening. Sit out back with your friends or your family, just relax, burn some piñon wood in the fire pit. That is a way to enjoy.
That's actually was it this is relevant to my interests.
Nice,
relatable content, my friend.
Yes.
Especially because I just picked up a couple of cheap cigars tonight. I say cheap. Lower cost cigars tonight, and I love to hang out on the back deck. Like we spent way too much money getting a nice deck set up in the backyard because I like to hang out in my backyard. But Texas is a special kind of hell sometimes, and it's just unbearably hot, and mosquitoes are a plague upon our house.
They are.
But I've got my Ryobi fans. I've got some big ones and the small bucket ones, so we'll set those up, point them at the rest of the yard, get ourselves a little air, and keep those little bastards off of us. Yep. And I also set up like a string of lights up top I ran Mr. line down it.
Yeah, nice.
And so it can actually be tolerable back there sometimes.
Yeah, that's so like I have several cousins who live kind of up north. Like I have one cousin who actually lives in Canada right now, and they were, I don't know if they were kind of raised in Denver, Colorado, or at least the Colorado area, because we used to live there when we were kids, when I was a kid, and my sisters, but we were only there for a couple of years, whereas they were there, I think, most of their lives. But then what I mean to say is I don't know how many of them have been this far south. So it's like, that's something you learn about Texas is, like you said, misting lines. It's just a small line where water goes out and then it mists down on you because it is so stinking hot in the dead of summer. So it's like you get a fan and you get that mist and you're just like, oh, that feels really nice. And I actually want to be outside right now.
Yep. It is nigh unbearable without such a thing.
But so yeah, it's the other funny thing is like I have a friend who lives in Seattle and I actually used to work with this girl who's from Seattle, and she's like we don't have AC units.
Purpose?
No, yeah, you have an AC unit. Every house has an AC unit. We don't even have AC up there. You don't need it. And I'm like, yeah.
No, yeah. If you don't have AC units down here, your habitation can be deemed unlivable.
Yeah, and I actually think that though, if you move to Texas, it is a rite of passage. Every person who moves to Texas from somewhere that's not in the South, you have to go at least one night without your AC in the summer. So the temperature at night during the worst of summer is like, 82 or something, 83? It's
what
still
is this,
very
Thunderdome?
warm.
Come on, man.
No, seriously, it's like very warm. It's extremely humid outside, and when your AC goes and you have to sleep all night with no AC and your house gets to almost 85, you're just like, why did I move here? I think you need to have that as a rite of passage, especially if you come from, somewhere up north where it's nice and cool all the time.
I think you're a sadist, and coming from me, that's saying a lot.
You have to experience at least one night without AC in the summer in Texas. Then you could say, I can live here now.
I clearly remember a couple of years after I moved here, I was working security, and polyester uniforms, gun belt, body armor, boots.
Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh.
And motorcycle to get there. So I drove my motorcycle to my site at 8 p.m., had to work till like 4 a.m., and it never really got below 100 degrees. It just stayed there, which was the most foreign thing I'd ever experienced in my life. Like, this doesn't feel like Earth. This feels like a weird easy bake oven, except there's nothing easy about the way I'm baking, and I'm miserable. It was a good thing that I was working like a boring static site and not interacting with people, because I can't imagine that I'd be pleasant to deal with soaking in my plastic monkey suit.
Ouch.
With no respite. There was no relief. I had a couple bottles of water in a backpack, and that was it. Just
my
8
torture
to
job,
10 hours of sweat.
Yeah, my torture job was definitely. I only lasted like 2 weeks, but when I was in college, I worked at the at one of the distribution centers, one of the UPS distribution centers, and it was near Dallas. And my job was I would be inside the trucks, and I would have to get the little packages, scan them with a scanner, and then mark them with a red marker. This was kind of, I don't know if it was the early days of that kind of, you could always track exactly where it went. But anyway, my whole job was to just take a package, scan it, and mark it. So every package had to be scanned and marked. But it was just the ones in the trucks. And we're talking summer in Texas, so it's already miserable. Inside a warehouse, which has no AC, so it's even more miserable. Inside a very cramped truck, which also has no AC and no fans. So
was this daytime or nighttime?
Daytime.
Oh, so it's also a not so easy bake
even
oven.
Worse. Yes, and
Gross.
I remember one of the guys on the team was there specifically to hurry people up. His whole job was like, come on, go, let's go. That was his job.
I can't imagine you have an extended life expectancy having that job in the summer in Texas.
So, yeah, so, the end result was every night driving home, I would be shirtless. I would have to take my shirt off because it was 100% drenched with sweat. And, my whole body was, I lost 10 pounds of body weight every single night in sweat. And, after the first couple of days, I'm like, yeah, this is not the job for me. And sure
that's
enough,
not a job for humans.
It really isn't.
Call me a pansy if you will, but not okay, man.
No AC, no fans, no nothing.
The no fans is the kicker for me. I know for a fact that air conditioning a warehouse is nigh impossible. I've worked in one. I used to work for a high-end furniture company. And I was a delivery driver till I got hurt, and then I was a warehouse guy. I know you can't AC the giant warehouse. I know. But no fans? Come the hell on.
There would be one or two fans far away, but, it's not really going to help you. You know what I mean?
4-foot industrial monsters. Or everyone's like just going to be cranky.
6-foot ones, as big as a human, but they're throughout. But it's like, okay, I get a little bit of hot air coming my way. That doesn't really help too much. Which actually reminds me of this trip that I took this was before I went to college. So my older sister had a vehicle that her, at the time, she was newlywed, and her new husband accidentally had an accident or something. It wasn't terrible, but the car was messed up. So my brother-in-law's father is like, hey, you can have this car, I'll fix this one. You can have this car for a while. So, but we had to go over to get it. And so my brother-in-law was actually from like the edge of Oklahoma, and I think it might be Arizona, whatever the state is right next to Oklahoma. But it was a teeny tiny little town, and it was a probably 2-hour drive away, maybe even 3 hours. And at the time, my brother-in-law owned an old Impala, like a 60s Impala.
Nice.
The kind that had no seat belts. It was very old. It was very metal. Like the dashboard was pointy, but it didn't matter because if anyone hit your car, you wouldn't feel it. It was just a huge chunk of metal. So, yeah. But the AC didn't work. And this was in summer. So I still remember the drive there was the most miserable drive because it was a very long drive, no AC, just hot air. All he could do was turn the fans on, which just meant hot air on my face for 2.5, 3 hours. When I finally got there, I got to drive the other car back, and it was a much more modern car with AC, and the whole time I had it cranked going, oh, this is so much better.
My old F-150 had no AC
gosh.
for a while, but it had those fun little windows where you could crack the little, like, triangle at the front of your window.
Yeah, the little triangle.
So,
oh, yeah. I think, yeah.
I know there's a name for them, but I've never been a big enough car guy to learn the name. It's like a cantilever window or something.
No, that's a triangle window.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that thing
But,
thing was my AC for years because getting your AC worked on was ludicrously expensive.
Yeah, when you're,
Probably still
especially when
is.
you're young, you couldn't afford that.
No, dude.
Well,
I was
I just had-
subsisting on ramen for a while, man. That was that cliche.
You know, what's funny, though, is my girlfriend Jenny was basically raised her entire life in Texas. And her first car was like a Chevy Cavalier, which didn't have AC, which had like the vinyl seating. So imagine
you
being in
stick to
Texas with no
everything.
AC and you stick to everything. She's like, yeah, my friends and I rarely went anywhere in my car because I didn't have AC. So how can you survive? How did you not melt into nothingness?
Under duress.
You can't do that in Texas. Too much heat. Come on. It's too hot here.
So now that everybody knows we're heat intolerant wusses,
Yeah, I do tend to complain a lot, but
I actually used to be way better
I'm
about heat.
validated.
I grew up
yeah?
in California, as I said, and we used to take vacations like into the actual desert, like cacti and tumbleweeds desert. It's where I learned to ride a dirt bike. We had one of those
Lucky.
one of those
wanted
four
one of
wheelers
those when I was
called
a
an
kid.
Odyssey, and ours was specifically called a suicide Odyssey by people who owned them because it had no rear suspension. So the rear suspension
goodness.
was your f***ing spine. Ask me how I know.
Oh, jeez.
Oh man, it's the reason I'm only 5'9", dude. That thing just and that's not even counting the time I almost flipped it. So you know, I'd go out to the desert and first thing in the morning, bitterly cold. Like frost crystals on the
Yeah.
sparse vegetation that was hard to find because everything was freaking sand.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the sun comes out, everything's baking. That all evaporates immediately, and you're just in this unforgiving, very shiny, bright hellscape. Like you get the sunburns under your eyebrow ridge because the sand is also reflecting. But like I used to literally go for runs and rock climbs in the sun, and you know all the sunscreen in the world. 'Cause you could tell how pasty I am. But the heat didn't bother me. I was fine. It was dry heat. So it wasn't like being smothered in a hot wool blanket and stuck in an oven like, you know, a witch had gotten a hold of you. And then I was working in an attic, removing insulation and ducting. And I was led to believe this was asbestos ducting, so we sprayed it down really heavily and cut it out and put it down. And, you know, back then I was an ignorant 18, 19-year-old. Like, I didn't know how dangerous that was and that it should have been done by a professional. I feel like we need a cut from one of those ads, like, if you've been affected by blah, 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 you need to cut. Yeah.
You're
So-
entitled to compensation. You may
Yes,
be
one of those
entitled
guys needs to pop
compensation.
in and tell me how f***ed I am. So I was doing that, and I'd gotten most of the way through, just powering through, but it was, you know, early or late summer, and there's no air moving in this attic space where all the ducting is. But I was fine. I could deal with heat, right? I got the most sudden onset migraine I've ever had in my life. Like, it just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I realized I couldn't see. Like, everything was fuzzy, and I was getting like blackout spots, and I'm going, what the fuck is going on? Why do I feel sick? I think I'm gonna throw up. Like, everything hit me so suddenly, which leads me to believe I was already kind of unaware of my surroundings, because I believe this had been happening for a while, and it just had to get so bad that I noticed it above all of the other malady going on. Wow. And so I crawl back to where the ladder is, and I was like, I think I'm going to be sick, guys. Can you guys help me down? And I don't remember the rest. And apparently I got put in my bed, covered in wet, cold cloths, and had been throwing up for an hour. And then my memory resumes.
Oh, my goodness.
And so I don't remember if that's a sign of heat stroke or heat exhaustion, but I was in a bad way. And they were super worried about me for like 8 hours. And finally kind of got my shit together, and I'd been able to keep down some water and starting to act a little more human. And the next day, I was more normal. So they're like, okay, we're not going to bring you to the hospital. But ever since that day, like, I haven't been good at dealing with heat anymore. That was like my breaking point. And now I have a daughter, and she's 4. And she spends 5 minutes outside in the heat, or even running around the AC. Spends time running around and all that. She turns bright, aggressively, violently, concerningly pink, and is hot to the touch.
Oh my goodness.
My first and only kid, so I know that kids are not good at heat regulation, but like, is it supposed to be this scary?
Right.
Did she inherit my inability to handle heat? Oh, I'm so sorry, child.
Yeah.
Daddy screwed you up.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I had one instance where I had definitely had heat exhaustion, but I almost had heat stroke. It was I was still living at home. I was probably 14 or 15, something like that. And we went to a church where they had like some property that they wanted to kind of refurbish for a summer camp. So we went out there one summer, and we were just cleaning up, and it was hot. This is in Oklahoma during the summer, so it was hot. And I remember we were all kind of gathered around the preacher's truck. So he brought his truck out, and this was an old-timey, 1970s truck, all metal. Most trucks are, but so we were all sitting in the back, and he came up with like one of those really large wrenches, or maybe it was like a cutting implement or something, and he slammed it down and went, ah, like that, and just kind of scared me. And I remember jumping and going, ha, that's a funny joke. And I went, ha, 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 ha. My body just started kind of convulsing. And I started crying, and I couldn't control myself. I was like, what's happening? And I didn't pass out, but I felt like I was, because I was just exhausted and full of, it was just so hot. And
you don't know you're that close to the breaking point till something goes,
just
surprise!
Like, kind of laugh crying, and I couldn't control myself. I was like, what is happening? And so, laid down for a while. They put a cold compress on me, and I was like, that's probably the hottest I've ever been. And that was not fun.
No.
Thankfully, it wasn't anything as bad as you. But that brings up, I think this is a perfect way to end this episode, is that brings up, okay, so there's a German word, apparently, and the word translates to not built for the cold. So if you're a person who is not built for cold, i.e. me and you, we are that German word.
I'd heard there was a word, but I'd heard there was a Greek word said not built for summer.
I think that's actually it. The Greek. Now that you said that, it's not a German word. It's a Greek word. So
yep. Not built for summer, and that's our pasty asses, my friend. You're wearing a Fallout 76 shirt, and that's what I was playing before our call. We belong inside playing games when we're not out playing with chainsaws in the woods.
And if that would have happened, I would have been a ghoul right now, because any exposure and
100%.
I'd be gone. I'd be like.
Vault dwellers, yes. Cave dwellers, that is us.
Yes. Keep us indoors, and we will survive.
Well, this has been fun. Thanks for having
Chris,
me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being my guest.
Hopefully it was a good enough time. Guest. We'll see you again.
Yeah, I had an absolute blast, so thank you very much for being with us, and we had a great conversation.
My pleasure. I'll see you again sometime.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
All right, later.
Thanks, everyone, for watching. Take care.